Welcome to the first episode of The Virtual Tactician. Today we're going to discuss CQB utilizing the game Ready or Not. But we're going to break down the entire shoot house using the core principles of CQB and discuss angles, perspectives, and viewpoints from the targets that are normally engaged. Now what you're seeing here is an actual camera mod, and I can put the link in the description. But the camera mod is allowing me to perform this entire analysis. And there's certain things that I want you to pay attention to. I want you to pay attention to lights, shadows, angles, views, and even considerations if these were real targets. So, let's go ahead and just give a moment and look at the first room. This is an L-shaped room. If you can see the character on the top left-hand side of the screen, you can tell that going into the L-shaped room, we are going from a corner. We are not entering from any kind of center. We'll get more into feeding into different sides of the room, but I want you to focus on where the door is. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see where we're going to enter from. Now, if you consider too, you can see on the lower left-hand corner where we're going towards. Think about what you'll be able to see if you were to go into this room. Think about the corners that you would be able to see if you opened the door versus peeked the door versus went all the way in. What would you have to clear to your right? What would you have to clear to your left? What could you already see before entering the room? The next room is the linear box room. Now I call this linear. If you've been on this map, you know that it's not quite linear, but it's pretty straight. And what I'm going to show is the targets that we'll need to engage here. There's one through the crevice or the opening in the cinder blocks, and there's another that's behind cover. I want you to give attention to the right-hand side of the screen on the first image at the top. Notice that my character is peeking through the doorway. That peek has allowed him to see the first target that is in through the cinder blocks. Now, my character will then have to go through and have to engage the target behind the cover. What I want you to pay attention to here is the angles that I'm utilizing. Now, granted, I know the layout here, but this is an isolated approach to how I'm going to use a linear box room and the angles here to my advantage. Let's watch the video. Notice how in my first angle, the first target could barely see me through the peak door. And in the second, even when I came into the hallway, there's not much you can see. Taking that linear box room then leads us to the corner fed room. The corner fed room is a room that has a side, either left or right, where the entrance is. It is not a center fed room. Here you can see two targets, one against the sandbags and one in the far right corner. In both of these instances, the way I'm going to approach from the linear room is I will have to engage the target on the far backhand corner towards the right or lower right hand corner, and then I will have to assess on how to engage the target that is tucked up in the left side corner next to the sandbags. Notice that the corner that I can see would be considered a soft corner or an easy corner, and the corner that I cannot see is a hard corner. Think about those hard corners and soft corners or easy corners as we go through the next rooms. Let's watch the video.
Hands behind your head! Police! Freeze! Hands behind your head!
Now I'm going to introduce a bit more complicated of a situation. Really, it's two different rooms put together into one situation. So let's talk about it. This is what would be considered an irregular room. You can see the door that I'm going to enter from on the top picture. In the white door, there's a very small hallway, and that hallway tees out into a larger hallway, which then has a target in the far right-hand corner, which you can see in the bottom right picture. One target there. Now, I will be able to see that target from the door, but let's see if I can see it while peeking. Immediately after that, after the T section, you'll be able to see a target down the hall on the far left side there. The question is, how can I best engage the target in the bottom right corner and also engage that? You'll want to notice things like my white light or anything else that might give idea of my presence there. So let's go ahead and watch the video. Notice from my entry point that the person on the far left side down the hall can actually see my white light punched out on the target that is first engaged. Consider that as you go into a real situation.
Freeze! Stop right there! Down on the ground, now! Hands behind your head, on the ground!
Notice how this one hallway is now connected to a much more complicated setup. So we're going to look at one irregular room and one square or box room that's somewhat center fed. Let's go ahead and break it down.
Stop where you are!
As I've entered the first irregular room here, notice in the video how I maintained moving along the strong wall, or in this case I really just moved along the perimeter. That allowed me to see most of the room while also being under the most cover and allowing to pie or peel the corners in a very effective and safe way. Notice also in the top picture where you can see me coming from the previous hallway and being able to engage the person tucked in this corner. Notice also, however, in the bottom picture that there is an additional target behind the cinder blocks, which I do not know of yet. Moving over now to the square or box room that is center fed. Notice on the right hand picture how we can see into the far back corners right from the entryway, both from the left and right side. We can also see from the previous video that I have direct line of sight all the way from the previous irregular room down to this target that is next to the cement tower there. There are three main reasons that this situation is ideal. Notice how this room is very well lit. Notice also that the room that I am coming from is very dark. And also notice that I can see the target from my very dark room into a very well lit room. This is very important for CQB when dealing with light, shadows, and other kinds of visibility factors. Let's go ahead and watch the video, but don't forget about the guy behind the cinder blocks.
Police! Down on the ground, now!
Now let's consider two corner fed rooms. Notice that the first room is corner fed and goes directly to a target, which leads then to another corner fed room with a second target, hidden behind a large wall.
Stop right there!
Notice how using a white light and peeking the door is not advantageous here because of the POV, but backing up and opening it wide is actually more advantageous for me. But I am in a very well lit room, while that room is very dark. I've now cleared the first corner-fed room, but notice how a rifle isn't advantageous here. You can actually see my suppressor across the wall that's covering the second target. So I've switched to my pistol, and now notice that you won't be able to see my pistol from the wall, although you will have heard the first shots on the first guy. Notice how the chem light casts a shadow. Shadows can be very deadly. Now for the final room, let's talk about a corner-fed room that entails a hostage situation. You can see from the angles here that I actually have an advantageous angle right onto the hostage taker. Now, I know this going in, but if I peek this door, I can actually utilize angles to engage only the target and not see any visibility onto the hostage, isolating what I'm aiming at.
Hands behind your head!
Always make sure to check behind corners of doors. You never know if someone's hiding behind there. And with that, let's go ahead and recap what we've seen so far. The first is the L-shaped room. Remember the discussion on corners. Remember the discussion on how you enter this room. It can be pretty advantageous depending on how you enter it, but it could be advantageous to the hostiles as well. The box room, although simple, don't take it for granted. It might be just you and one more person, but notice how difficult it can be if it's just you caught in one room with no way in, no way out, except the way you came and the way you need to go. Irregular rooms are not that irregular. In fact, it's pretty common to find oddly shaped rooms, circles, non-edges, anything that you need to be aware of before going in. Be sure to clear as much as you can from outside the room before going in, and watch those corners. Connected rooms can be pretty difficult, especially if they're in irregular shapes. But even then, we can find sometimes that we can see into the rooms from a long stretch away before even thinking about engaging into the next room. Just be careful of anything that might have a shape or a structure that might hide a suspect or anybody else. Rooms don't necessarily need to be large to be difficult. Even 2 small corner-fed rooms like this can prove difficult for finding the right angles to engage the soft corners, and then make it even more difficult to engage the hard corners. A hostage situation is never ideal, but be sure to use the corners to your advantage. See what you can find from the outside before going in. And the rest is up for discussion. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What questions do you have? CQB is not cookie cutter. So if you have any questions, let's have a discussion. And until then, I'll see you in the next episode of The Virtual Tactician.